Behold, our stunning X-59. What a unique aircraft.
As the curtain of secrecy was drawn back, a sleek and silver bullet emerged from the shadows. After 6 years of intensive development, NASA and Lockheed Martin have finally unveiled their revolutionary quiet supersonic aircraft, the X-59 QueSST. This cutting-edge marvel is poised to shatter the sound barrier and redefine the skies. With its innovative technology, the X-59 promises to make supersonic passenger flight a reality. But what groundbreaking features does it bring to the table? And when can we expect to experience the thrill of supersonic travel? Let's explore how NASA finally unveiled quiet X-59 Supersonic Aircraft. The sonic boom. The sonic boom is a phenomenon that has long been the Achilles heel of supersonic flight. When an aircraft travels faster than the speed of sound, the compressed air molecules against the body of the plane produce shock waves that merge to form the sonic boom. Sonic booms generate enormous amounts of sound energy, sounding similar to an explosion or a thunderclap to the human ear. Sonic booms are often likened to the crack of a supersonic bullet or the snap of a bullwhip, but on a much larger scale. When a supersonic aircraft breaks the sound barrier, it produces a loud and startling noise that can awaken people and even cause minor damage to structures. This has led to the prohibition of routine supersonic flight over land. However, research suggests that with careful design and shaping of the vehicle, the nuisance of sonic booms can be significantly reduced, making overland supersonic flight a more viable option. It's important to note that sonic booms don't occur only when an object crosses the sound barrier, and they're not heard in all directions. Instead, the boom is a continuous effect that occurs while the object is traveling at supersonic speeds, affecting only observers within a specific region behind the object. This region takes the shape of a geometrical cone that moves behind the object as it travels. When the cone passes over an observer, they'll briefly experience the sonic boom. By understanding the dynamics of sonic booms, researchers and engineers can work towards mitigating their impact and making supersonic flight more accessible. When an aircraft moves through the air, it generates a series of pressure waves both in front of and behind it, similar to the bow and stern waves created by a boat. These waves travel at the speed of sound, and as the aircraft's speed increases, they become compressed because they can't move out of each other's way quickly enough. Eventually, these waves merge into a single shock wave that travels at the speed of sound, a critical speed known as Mach 1. This speed is approximately 1,192 kilometers per hour at sea level and 20 degrees Celsius. In stable flight, the shockwave begins at the aircraft's nose and ends at its tail. Due to the symmetry of the aircraft's movement, the shockwave forms a Mach cone, similar to a vapor cone, with the aircraft at its tip. This cone-shaped shockwave is a key aspect of supersonic flight and is responsible for the sonic boom that occurs when an aircraft breaks the sound barrier. As an aircraft travels faster, its shock cone becomes finer and more pointed. The pressure distribution around the aircraft changes, creating an overpressure profile known as an N-wave. This N-wave causes a distinctive double boom when the aircraft breaks the sound barrier. When the aircraft is maneuvering, the pressure distribution changes into a U-wave shape, which is amplified 2 to 5 times the N-wave. However, this amplified overpressure only affects a small area compared to the rest of the sonic boom. The strength of the sonic boom depends on the aircraft's altitude, speed, and size. The peak overpressure can vary from less than 50 to 500 pascals for an N-wave boom. The strongest sonic boom ever recorded was 7,000 pascals, but it did not cause injury to researchers. Buildings in good condition can withstand pressures of 530 pascals or less without damage. Community exposure to sonic booms is typically below 100 pascals. Ground motion from sonic booms is rare and well below structural damage thresholds. The power of the shockwave depends on the quantity of air being accelerated, so larger aircraft produce stronger shocks. However, at very high speeds and altitudes, the shock cone becomes weaker and no boom is heard. The length of the boom depends on the aircraft's length, with longer aircraft producing a less powerful boom. Secondary shock waves can form at convex points on the aircraft, such as the leading wing edge and engine inlets. These shock waves add to the main shock wave, maximizing its magnitude and rise time. making the boom seem louder. The characteristic distance for this effect is around 4,000 feet, below which the sonic boom becomes softer. However, supersonic travel at this altitude is inefficient due to drag, posing a significant problem. So, how do supersonic aircrafts function? The supersonic aircraft. It's been established that supersonic aircraft are capable of flying faster than the speed of sound, which is Mach 1. These aircraft can reach speeds up to 5 times Mach 1 or Mach 5. The typical speed range for supersonic aircraft is between 700 and 1,500 miles per hour, with most aircraft not exceeding 1,500 miles per hour. There are various types of supersonic aircraft, each with its unique design approach. Some models prioritize aerodynamics, sacrificing some thruster power for improved airflow. Others rely on powerful thrusters to compensate for less aerodynamic designs, achieving greater speeds. In the United States military, supersonic aircraft can cost between $13 million and $35 million, depending on the model and its capabilities. These high-performance aircraft require careful design and engineering to achieve supersonic speeds while maintaining stability and control. Their advanced design and powerful engines make them valuable assets for military and research applications. The pressure generated by sonic booms from aircraft is typically in the range of a few pounds per square foot. However, the pressure intensity decreases as the altitude of the vehicle increases. This is because the shockwave dissipates and spreads out away from the vehicle, resulting in lower pressures on the ground. Interestingly, the speed of the vehicle has a minimal impact on the sonic boom pressure. While the vehicle's speed affects the intensity of the shockwave, the pressure on the ground remains relatively consistent. This means that even if an aircraft is traveling at a high speed, the sonic boom pressure on the ground will be similar to that of an aircraft traveling at a slower speed, but at a lower altitude. Concorde, the famous supersonic passenger jet. In the late 1950s, supersonic transport designs were being developed, and it was thought that flying higher would avoid sonic boom issues. However, the North American XB-70 Valkyrie's first flight proved this assumption wrong, showing that the boom was still a problem even at 70,000 feet. This led to the characterization of the N-wave and the development of a figure of merit by Richard Seabass and Albert George to measure sonic boom levels. The FM is based on the aircraft's weight and length, with lower values indicating less boom. Using this calculation, the Concorde and Boeing 2707 were found to have FMs of 1.4 and 1.9, respectively, which was considered too high. This, combined with public resentment and political factors, led to the demise of most SST projects. However, smaller airplane designs like business jets tend to produce minimal to no audible booms. Building on earlier research, Seabass George and Christine M. Darden developed the Jones-Seabass-George-Darden theory of sonic boom minimization. This theory aims to spread out the N-wave laterally and temporally by using a sharp, wide-angle nose cone and a swept-back or oblique flying wing to smooth out the shockwave. This approach can raise the characteristic altitude from 40,000 to 60,000 feet, making it suitable for SST aircraft. The area rule is also used to shape the fuselage and reduce the shockwave intensity. For decades, the theory of sonic boom minimization remained untested until DARPA initiated the Quiet Supersonic Platform project and funded the shaped sonic boom demonstration aircraft. The SSBD modified an F-5 Freedom Fighter with a refined shape, lengthening the nose and adding a fairing to reduce sonic boom intensity. After 21 flights and 1,300 recordings, the SSBD demonstrated a 1/3 reduction in boom intensity, a promising result that could have made Concorde's boom acceptable. Following the SSBD, NASA and Gulfstream Aerospace tested the Quiet Spike on an F-15B aircraft in 2006. The Quiet Spike is a telescoping boom that weakens shock waves on the nose of the aircraft at supersonic speeds. Over 50 test flights were conducted, including probing of the shock waves by a second F-15B. While some theoretical designs like the Boostman biplane aim to eliminate sonic booms, generating aerodynamic lift inevitably creates shock waves. In 2018, NASA awarded Lockheed Martin a $247,500,000 contract to build the low-boom flight demonstrator, aiming to reduce the sonic boom to the sound of a car door closing. The sound of a sonic boom depends largely on the distance between the observer and the aircraft shape producing the sonic boom. A sonic boom is usually heard as a deep double boom, as the aircraft is usually some distance away. The sound is much like that of mortar bombs, commonly used in firework displays. It is a common misconception that only one boom is generated during the subsonic to supersonic transition. Rather, the boom is continuous along the boom carpet for the entire supersonic flight. A former Concorde pilot explains that on board, there is no audible sound. Instead, the crew sees the pressure wave moving down the airplane, indicated by the instruments, particularly around Mach 1. The sonic boom is not heard, similar to how a ship's wake is left behind. In 1964, NASA and the Federal Aviation Administration began the Oklahoma City sonic boom tests, which caused 8 sonic booms per day over 6 months. Valuable data was gathered from the experiment, but 15,000 complaints were generated and ultimately entangled the government in a class action lawsuit, which it lost on appeal in 1969. Sonic booms were also a nuisance in North Cornwall and North Devon in the UK, as these areas were underneath the flight path of Concorde. Windows would rattle, and in some cases, the torching, pointing underneath roof slates, would be dislodged with the vibration. There has been recent work in this area, notably under DARPA's Quiet Supersonic Platform studies. Research by acoustics experts under this program began looking more closely at the composition of sonic booms, including the frequency content. Several characteristics of the traditional sonic boom N wave can influence how loud and irritating it can be perceived by listeners on the ground. Even strong N waves, such as those generated by Concorde or military aircraft, can be far less objectionable if the rise time of the overpressure is sufficiently long. A new metric has emerged, known as perceived loudness, measured in PLDB. This takes into account the frequency content, rise time, etc. A well-known example is the snapping of one's fingers, in which the perceived sound is nothing more than an annoyance. Depending on the aircraft's altitude, sonic booms reach the ground 2 to 60 seconds after flyover. However, not all booms are heard at ground level. The speed of sound at any altitude is a function of air temperature. A decrease or increase in temperature results in a corresponding decrease or increase in sound speed. Under standard atmospheric conditions, air temperature decreases with increased altitude. For example, when the sea level temperature is 15 degrees Celsius, the temperature at 30,000 feet drops to minus 45 degrees Celsius. This temperature gradient helps bend the sound waves upward. Therefore, for a boom to reach the ground, the aircraft's speed relative to the ground must be greater than the speed of sound at the ground. For example, the speed of sound at 30,000 feet is about 670 miles per hour, but an aircraft must travel at least 750 miles per hour for a boom to be heard on the ground. The composition of the atmosphere is also a factor. Temperature variations, humidity, atmospheric pollution, and winds can all affect how a sonic boom is perceived on the ground. Even the ground itself can influence the sound of a sonic boom. Hard surfaces such as concrete, pavement, and large buildings can cause reflections that may amplify the sound of a sonic boom. Similarly, grassy fields and profuse foliage can help attenuate the strength of the overpressure of a sonic boom. Currently, there are no industry-accepted standards for the acceptability of a sonic boom. However, work is underway to create metrics that will help in understanding how humans respond to the noise generated by sonic booms. Until such metrics can be established, either through further study or supersonic overflight testing, it is doubtful that legislation will be enacted to remove the current prohibition on supersonic overflight in place in several countries, including the United States. How the banning of Concorde affected the development of transportation. The world's fastest and arguably the most iconic passenger aircraft of all time, Concorde, gave passengers a taste of supersonic flight for nearly 3 decades. Its speed was a blessing for many super busy and wealthy business travelers who enjoyed the short hop over the Atlantic, and for transporting important cargo such as supplies and organs for transplant during medical emergencies. With a top speed of up to 1,354 miles per hour, the supersonic jet could make the transatlantic journey between London Heathrow and New York JFK in about 3 hours. For many, Flying on the Concorde and experiencing such speed was a momentous occasion. However, that same speed was not well received by people on the ground, leading some countries to ban supersonic flights. Even before Concorde took to the skies commercially, there were voices of dissent against its environmental consequences. In 1966, British environmental activist Richard Wiggs founded the Anti-Concorde Project, which challenged the idea of any supersonic transport aircraft. The booms of the sonic tests leading up to the first test flight of Concorde would often startle people and cause windows to crack. To highlight the long-term effects of a supersonic jetliner, Wiggs used mass media advertising campaigns, including full-page advertisements in the national press. He claimed the Concorde affected the ozone layer and drew attention to its noise levels. By the time Concorde was launched, many countries were convinced that the plane was not a good choice to fly over land and was suitable for supersonic flights only over water. This left little choice for potential Concorde customers regarding network expansion using the jet. The sonic boom produced when the aircraft broke the sound barrier attracted numerous protests at airports and picket lines at some runways. In 1972, when the aircraft landed at Sydney Airport, it was welcomed by a group of demonstrators, calling for the Concorde to be banned in the region. Concorde began scheduled flights on January 21, 1976, and not long after that, the U.S. Congress banned the aircraft from landing in the territory due to citizen protests and noise pollution concerns. On March 11, 1976, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey banned Concorde from landing at JFK Airport. Protests had started a year before the official ban, when around 2,000 cars stopped traffic near the airport. Concorde's opposition claimed that the jet was the noisiest aircraft in service and would counter all the efforts to ensure stricter noise standards. British Airways and Air France found the ban baseless and filed a lawsuit in 1977. In August 1977, a district court judge in New York found the ban discriminatory and unfair and allowed Concorde test landings in the following 10 days. In October 1977, the Supreme Court finally lifted the ban, stating that the Port Authority was dragging its feet with the ban not based on any precise noise requirements. The U.S. Secretary of Transportation allowed Concorde to operate flights to Washington Dulles International Airport. However, Air France discontinued its service to the airport in 1982, while British Airways stopped in 1994 due to low demand. Before the U.S. ban was lifted and slots were awarded at JFK, both Air France and British Airways began looking at other destinations to use their new Concordes. BA wanted to deploy the supersonic jet between London and Sydney and was looking for a stopover city for refueling. Singapore seemed a suitable choice. The airline was already running a thrice-weekly service to Bahrain, so it extended the service to Singapore as the next stage. However, the flight to Singapore met with massive opposition in Malaysia over the plane's supersonic boom. The service had to be stopped after just 3 flights. Crossing India to reach Singapore was also a suitable option for BA, but that country refused to allow the plane to fly at supersonic speed over its airspace. Many believe, however, that the real reason for Malaysia and India to deny Concorde entry was political, as both countries were trying to obtain essential slots at London Heathrow. BA eventually figured out another route to Singapore, but it consumed so much fuel that the service ended on November 1, 1980, citing unprofitable operations. The aircraft, however, went on to fly for more than 2 decades after that before ceasing operations in 2003 with a final flight between London and New York. The Concorde had a maximum cruising speed of 2,179 kilometers per hour, or Mach 2.04, more than twice the speed of sound, allowing the aircraft to reduce the flight time between London and New York to about 3 hours. So it's not surprising that the United States Defense and the Lockheed Martin are trying to find a solution to the sonic boom. The quiet X-59, dubbed Son of Concorde. The Concorde flew its final flight almost exactly 20 years ago, yet it continues to capture the imaginations of Americans old and young. So it came with more than just a little curiosity and whispers. When in 2016, Lockheed Martin secured a preliminary design contract for the X-59 QueSST, aiming to fly in the 2020 timeframe. A scale model underwent wind tunnel testing from February to April 2017, and the preliminary design review was scheduled for June 2017. Lockheed Martin was the sole bidder for NASA's request for proposals in August 2017 and received a $247,500,000 contract in April 2018 to design and build the low-boom X-plane. The U.S. Air Force assigned the X-59 QueSST designation to the demonstrator in June 2018. NASA Langley completed wind tunnel testing of an 8% scale model in October 2018, expanding on previous experimental and computational predictions. The team conducted tests over Galveston, Texas in November 2018 to gather feedback on the sonic boom simulations. Lockheed Martin began machining the first part in Palmdale, California in November 2018, and the initial major structural parts were loaded in the tooling assembly by May 2019. Assembly was underway in June 2019, and the external vision system was flight tested on a King Air at NASA Langley. High-speed wind tunnel tests were conducted at NASA Glenn Research Center to verify inlet performance predictions. The critical design review was successfully held in September 2019, and the wing assembly was completed in 2020. By December 2020, construction was halfway done, with the first flight planned for 2020. Flight clearance testing and acoustic validation were conducted at the Armstrong Flight Research Center through September 2020. NASA planned to conduct flight tests over U.S. cities to verify the safety and performance of the X-59's quiet supersonic technologies and evaluate community responses for regulators. The results of the community overflights were slated to be delivered to the ICAO and the FAA in 2027, allowing for a decision to be made to revise the rules on commercial supersonic travel over land in 2028. As of 2022, the X-59's first flight was planned for 2024, with the installation of the General Electric F414 GE100 engine completed in November 2022. Lockheed Martin released a video showing the assembled X-59 rolling out of a hangar on August 4, 2023, and unveiled the X-59 on January 12, 2024. As NASA's newest X-plane, the X-59 is designed to break the sound barrier without the thunderous sonic booms that typically occur when aircraft go supersonic. Instead, the QueSST will make a much quieter thump, similar to the sound of a car door slamming as heard from indoors. If successful, the jet has the potential to revolutionize supersonic flight and aviation in general. After years of development, NASA and Lockheed Martin showed off the finished X-59 QueSST in front of a crowd of nearly 150 at the legendary Lockheed Martin Skunk Works facility in Palmdale, California, a research and development site typically known for its secrecy. When the curtain finally fell to reveal the X-59, the assembled crowd applauded and held their mobile phones aloft to capture photos of the new jet, shining red and blue under stage lights. The elongated beak-like nose section of the aircraft stood out prominently, showing off the fact that it does not have a forward-facing window. Greg Ulmer, Lockheed Martin's Vice President of Aeronautics, stated that this is a moment future generations will look back upon with both awe and admiration. The Skunk Works mantra of quick, quiet, and quality takes on a whole new meaning. He noted that as they usher in the hopes of a new era of quiet supersonic travel, made possible through their collaboration with NASA. The technological advancements it houses will make quiet supersonic flight possible. The X-59's thin, tapered nose accounts for almost a third of its length and will break up the shock waves that would ordinarily result in a supersonic aircraft causing a sonic boom. Due to this configuration, the cockpit is located almost halfway down the length of the aircraft and does not have a forward-facing window. Instead, the QueSST team developed the External Vision System, a series of high-resolution cameras feeding a 4K monitor in the cockpit. The QueSST team also designed the aircraft with its engine mounted on top and gave it a smooth underside to help keep shockwaves from merging behind the aircraft and causing a sonic boom. The low-boom X-plane, also known as the X-59 QueSST, measures 99.7 feet in length and 29.5 feet in wingspan, with a maximum takeoff weight of 32,300 pounds. Powered by a General Electric F414 GE1 engine, it is designed to reach a maximum speed of Mach 1.5 and cruise at Mach 1.42 at an altitude of 55,000 feet. The aircraft's cockpit, ejection seat, and canopy are borrowed from a Northrop T-38, while the landing gear comes from an F-16. The engine, with afterburner, produces 22,000 pounds force of thrust. To achieve a low boom, the aircraft features a long, narrow airframe and canards, which are designed to prevent shock waves from coalescing. As of 2017, the expected ground noise was around 60 decibels, significantly quieter than current supersonic aircraft. By 2018, projections indicated that the aircraft would produce a 75 EPNB thump on the ground, comparable to the sound of closing a car door, a significant reduction from the Concorde's 105 to 110 EPNB. However, the central engine's top-mounted intake poses a risk of inlet flow distortion due to vortices. The flush cockpit design means that the long, pointed nose cone will obstruct forward visibility, but an enhanced flight vision system will compensate for this limitation. The EVS features a forward 4K camera with a 33-degree by 19-degree angle of view, along with long-wave infrared sensors. In January 2019, Collins Aerospace was selected to supply its Pro-Line Fusion cockpit avionics, which will display the boom on the ground and provide EVS capabilities. The Collins EVS-3600 multispectral imaging system, located beneath the nose, aids in landing, while the NASA External Vision System provides a forward view. Although it's still just being tested and there's no prototype yet, this development, when fully functional, would change the face of transportation for good. The confirmation test. NASA's X-59 experimental aircraft is unique. It's designed to fly faster than the speed of sound, but without causing a loud sonic boom. To confirm the X-59's ability to fly supersonic, while only producing quiet sonic thumps, NASA needs to be able to record these sounds from the ground. The agency recently completed tests aimed at understanding equipment and procedures needed to make those recordings. NASA's carpet determination. In entirety, measurements flights examined the quality and ruggedness of a new generation of ground recording systems, focusing on how to deploy the systems for X-59 testing and retrieve the data they collect. In all, researchers set up 10 microphone stations over a 30-mile stretch of desert near NASA's Armstrong Flight Research Center in Edwards, California. Dr. Forrest Carpenter, principal investigator for the third flight series, known as Carpet Deem 3, explained that they are trying to answer questions such as how many people are required to service the instruments on a daily basis, how to retrieve the data, and how many vehicles are needed. He likened their current efforts to learning how to dance, preparing for the larger-scale operation that lies ahead. As the X-59 itself is not yet flying, so NASA is using an F-15 and an F-18 from NASA Armstrong. The Carpet Diem 3 testing involved 20 supersonic passes with speeds ranging from Mach 1.15 to Mach 1.4 at altitudes ranging from 40,000 to 53,000 feet. 3 of the passes involved an F-18 conducting a special inverted dive maneuver to simulate a quiet sonic boom, with one getting as quiet as 67 perceived level decibels, a measure of the perceived noisiness of the jet for an observer on the ground. Larry Cleott, sub-project manager for the QueSST acoustic validation phase, expects the X-59 sonic thump to be as low as about 75 perceived loudness decibels. He notes that this is significantly quieter than the Concorde, which was over 100 perceived loudness decibels. In order to measure these very quiet sonic thumps, the ground recording systems used in the Carpet Diem flights were calibrated to measure as low as about 50 perceived loudness decibels, the equivalent to being in the room with a running refrigerator. Carpet Diem 3 also validated the use of automatic dependent surveillance broadcast, an existing technology flown on all commercial aircraft and most private aircraft to report speed and position. This system triggers the ground recording systems to begin recording. Cleott explained that it was not feasible to have 70 individuals stationed at each instrumentation box, so they had to develop a method to automate the process. The recording systems are designed to withstand the desert elements, the extreme heat of summer and the cold of winter, and to be resistant to damage from wildlife, such as chewing by rodents, coyotes, and foxes. Cleott stated that during Phase 2 of the QueSST mission, they anticipate conducting recordings of sonic thumps for up to 9 months. He emphasized the need for instrumentation and operations that can support such an extended deployment. Another lesson learned: setup time for the recording stations was just under an hour, compared to the anticipated 2.5 hours. Given the performance of the systems, the team will assess whether they need to visit all the sites every day of Phase TO testing. As NASA's Carpet Diem research team concluded their testing, they gained invaluable insights into the importance of coordination and documentation in such large-scale research endeavors. The team worked closely with various internal organizations, including NASA Armstrong's environmental and safety offices, to ensure a smooth and successful testing process. In addition to internal collaborations, the team also worked with external parties, such as the United States Bureau of Land Management, to secure approval for using public lands for testing. Law enforcement agencies provided crucial support in securing the test site, while the Federal Aviation Administration granted approval for NASA jets to fly outside the Edwards Air Force Base restricted airspace, enabling the team to conduct a critical portion of the Carpet Diem tests. As the team looks ahead to QueSST Phase 2, they are preparing for practice sessions in 2024, incorporating all the lessons learned and best practices from the 3 phases of Carpet Diem. By applying these insights, the team aims to further refine their research and drive innovation in the field. The success of Carpet Diem serves as a testament to the power of collaboration and careful planning in advancing scientific knowledge. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.